Hey, my name is Daniel and welcome to a quick campaign overview and my thoughts on a new game currently on GameFound, and that is called Threshold by Open Owl Studios. As always, quick disclaimer that this video is not sponsored, however, just by the sheer virtue of the fact that I am covering this game and not some other games, that already makes me a little bit biased maybe towards this game, because I'm not covering any other game. I specifically choose the games that I'm interested in, mainly as a backer, as just a fellow board gamer. So if you are looking for something completely neutral, like a back or not to back kind of videos, this is not quite the case here. It's more like I'm excited about this game and here is why, rather than back or not to back. I hope it makes sense to you. But in any case, I'll probably explain more as I go, so you know what, let's just come over to my computer. Well, I'm just gonna scroll through this page. So we're looking at the Threshold campaign page currently on GameFound. It's a game by Open Owl Studios, and it has 18 days left of this campaign. Probably by the time you'll be watching this, it will be 15 maybe, because I'm recording this on Monday with the intention of posting this on Thursday, so I keep this in mind. And it currently has $449,000 raised through the backers, and hopefully by the time we'll be watching it, it will be more. And I'm saying so because I genuinely wish all games are doing well in their crowdfunding. And if you watched my previous video in this kind of video genre, where I go through a campaign overview and my thoughts, that was about the game called Druid Pap, and I explained kind of 3 things I pay attention to whenever I'm looking for new games, kind of 3 things I consider. First is, would I enjoy playing this game? And I know it kind of sounds obvious, but you know, oftentimes content creators, they sometimes just do like complete neutral game overviews, like a rundown of all crowdfunding campaigns currently on Kickstarter or GameFound. This is not quite the case for me. I am doing these videos more like just a gamer actually looking for games for me to play, rather than just for everyone, you know, doing completely like a neutral overview, which again, as I said, makes me a little bit biased towards this game. This is why I'm acknowledging that this is the case. Now, the second thing I'm paying attention to, kind of considering whenever I'm looking for new games, is would I be able to play this game realistically, like given all the time constraints and all of that, you know, the things called life. So will I actually have time to play this game? And the third thing is, like, if I do enjoy the game and if I do have time to play the game, then the third, if you know all the stars aligned, then will I be able to maybe film some videos potentially for you guys to enjoy? Maybe is there enough nerdy details to talk about in a game? So that's kind of the 3 questions I'm trying to answer, and you know what, let's try to find out as we're gonna scroll through this page. So Threshold is a solo and cooperative game of epic proportions, deep character customization and strategic combat set in an immersive world. So let's just scroll down this a bit. And yeah, that's how the game looks like. And Threshold is a massive open-world role-playing game that blends tactical card combat game, deep character customization, endless loot, and living world that responds to your choices. And I'm not sure if I can find this, but yeah, this is what they say. If you played any MMO, this game comes the closer to the experience. And yeah, so basically, at least from my understanding, at least from what they've been saying on this page and in their videos and all the kind of their messages, they are trying to capture that feeling, that vibe of MMO-RPGs or action RPGs, namely World of Warcraft or Path of Exile, the video games here in the board gaming format. And whether they succeed in that or not, we'll, I guess, find out as we're gonna keep scrolling through the page. But I should probably also mention that my background, if you will, as a gamer comes in a lot of video games and a lot of MMO-RPGs specifically. I've been playing a lot of Lineage 2 back in, 2000s. And then I've been playing Korean MMO, another one is called Aeon. I've been playing for maybe 5 years or maybe 3 years, and then I'll be playing, of course, World of Warcraft for maybe 5 years or more. So yeah, I'm definitely an experienced in that sense. I've also played Path of Exile, of course, and Diablo, and so all the games that they taken as inspiration, I played all of them a lot, if you will. And yeah, let's just see if they manage to capture that vibe. So why back now? I'm gonna scroll through. So how to play? Yeah, you have this world that you can explore on this kind of double layered board. And I think it reminds me a little bit of Aridia, the way at least the kind of all those sections in the map are presented here. I think this looks pretty nice, and we're gonna talk more about this storage system and the way kind of all these tokens, they have their own dedicated space, which I find quite neat. And then you have your combat, your battle, kind of grid-based tactical combat, kind of like Gloomhaven, but more like slash maybe Slay the Spire, so it's kind of mixed between that, I would say, because it's a card play, but also kind of grid-based, hex-based combat. So this is pretty, again, something on my taste, I would say. And progress, win or lose combat, every session matters, and you have these upgradable loot cards. As you can see, you have these sleeves, and you're kind of crafting your own affixes, which is exactly the way the itemization works in some of the games like Path of Exile or Diablo. So this is again something I'm really excited about. Now what's in the box, and we're gonna see that there is quite a lot of content, some character boards and cards, and I'm not gonna list all of that, but I'm gonna probably scroll down a little bit more to see what's there. So there are, I believe, 4 starting heroes. There is a Mystic, that's how it looks like. There is a standee and a miniature, the tray, which we're gonna talk about again in a moment. And yeah, I think this looks pretty neat. Then we have the Guardian, which is like a melee character, and again all the standees and a miniature and the tray. And upgrade, we have Hunter, same thing, and we have the Alchemist. Yep, all the art, and I believe 2 new heroes are currently they've been locked behind stretch goals probably. I'm not sure I fully understand this part yet, but I believe there will be 2 more additional heroes in the base game. But of course there is expansion, we'll get to that in a moment. And we have some enemies here, and again this is somewhat inspired maybe by Gloomhaven, and there is a kind of character stats, if you will. They have different different stats, and they have different set of combat decks, specifically kind of specific tied to each of those different types of enemies, and they have their cards which are sort of showing what the intention of that enemy gonna be on the back of the card. As you can see, for example, on this one, surprise attack is probably gonna move and have a melee attack. Maybe on this one, the next card, Cinder, is gonna do like a short range attack, like a mid range attack. And this one, yeah. So they kind of trying to telegraph their movements, the moveset, what they're gonna do. And if we scroll down a bit further, there are different kind of enemies. I think the art is look pretty good. I'm going to talk about this again in a moment. Different kind of family of enemies, if you will, and they're different upgrade stages again, if you will. So kind of elementals, with different movesets, and bandits. Yeah, all again with their stats card and their ability cards. And we have some beasts enemies as well, and again all with different movesets specific to that kind of enemy type. And we have 8 new enemy types coming up. They will be adding again as the game develops, I believe. So there's going to be all added more into the base game, I believe, at least, not as something else. And okay, so we have this encounter book alongside this double-sided region combat boards, which I think looks pretty neat. And as you can see, they have different kind of areas, different regions within each of those maps. For example, this one is a pinkish, this one kind of like a icy one, and this is not just visuals. This actually affects your gameplay tactics, because certain abilities, they only, for example, deal damage only to enemies within that specific area. So there's a lot of kind of tactical things tied to those visuals. So this, even though it's aesthetically pleasant, but it's more than that. It's very tactical in that sense. Now there's also a little weird looking double-sided threshold combat board, and threshold, I believe, is basically like a outer world portal where you go to fight some stronger enemies there. So again, we have some tokens, and we have all these trays, which we're gonna again talk about in a moment. So explore the world. We have this dual layered region board for the first region, and I believe there are 3 of them in the base game. This one is called Fractured Isles. Then we have Sandstone Desert, which looks again quite deserty, quite reddish, pretty nice. And the next one is Red River Valley. Yeah, and I believe there are 3 of them in the base game, and all of them comes with this region tray, which allows you to save the entire progress of all the quests and markers, and basically the entire session, the entire thing saves underneath the map in this tray, which is pretty neat. Yeah, as you can see, they're showing over here on this picture. If I zoom in a bit, so this is where you keep everything belong to this specific region, all the like encounter cards and item cards and quests and whatnot, and keep them all here. Then you put this region board on top, and then there is a lead on top. So again, it's a very nice way of organizing and storing and all of that. We're going to talk about this in a moment. So upgrade your hero, we have items, and as I explained, we have some items there. They have those kind of empty slots that you can add certain affixes to those slots. Again, this is exactly, if you've been playing Path of Exile or Diablo, you probably know how it works. If not, this is basically the way of you have those clear affix sleeves that you essentially allows us to alter certain items. For example, you have this Nature's Bane, this axe or whatever that is, and if you let's say you put this sleeve, it will become Nature's Bane or Fortitude, which will add you 1 defense card. And if you put this sleeve, it will become Nature's Bane of Clarity, and you're gonna have 1 extra draw ability in this empty slot, which I find is pretty neat. I like the system so far. So skill cards and basically everything in this game is your cards, your stamina, your skills, your actions, all of that is tied to your deck. This is essentially a deck building, and here they just showing all different kind of family of different skill cards. We have the Pyromancy, Brutality, Aegis, we have Resilience and Bulwark, and all kind of different groups, all kind of family of cards. Some nature cards, some movement cards, some sharp shot and bladecraft and conjuration and ward weaving, so all kind of different types of spells and abilities and whatnot. So that's all of that. There's also additional cards like boons and burdens and wounds, and you have your crafting different vocations. As you can see, you can become basically like an alchemist or a blacksmith or herbalist, I believe, and a jewel crafter. So things of that sort. Kind of think of professions in World of Warcraft or things of that sort. Now, there is also an expansion called Last Stand, which adds another region, I believe. Yep, that's how it looks like. It's a Ridgeback Mountains region with more quests, more things, adventure cards, more region board, and more enemy family, also specific to that region, although this probably I'm going to touch upon a little bit later. And we have another expansion specifically for the character, new class, Assassin. Again, comes with the same set of components, so the miniatures, the standee, and the starting cards, as well as all those things. And we have the Beast Rider, again, all with the same things of components. Now the story I'm gonna skip for now. I'm gonna let you scroll and read it in more details, and let's see if there's anything else I should cover in this kind of general overview. So Assassin, again, they're talking about different kind of characters here. You are your deck, so you will grow and enhance through your character and skill and wound, relic and boon and burden, title and threshold. So by basically building your deck of all those different things, you effectively create your character. That's how you progress through the game, by leveling up, doing quests and adding more cards to your deck. It's kind of the whole skill system and work around that. Now the skill system here is they explain a little bit more. Customize a hero with 12 unique skill groups. That's what I was talking about, kind of skill families, how skills work, skill categories, as weapon, magic, defense and tactics, and here they're giving a breakdown of each of them, which is pretty neat. And each type of card has a different effect. For example, it could be instant effect, or it could be a buff that lasts until the end of round, end of turn. Like this, for example, this lightning symbol is an instant effect, so this is something you can play right away. And for example, if this one with a like hourglass symbol is something that stays as a persistent effect, for example. So I'm gonna scroll down a little bit further down. There's again a different explanation of different of those skill families, conjuration and momentum and nature, pyromancy, reflex, and you can build the character like combining all of those different type groups. At least from my understanding, you have full freedom in the way you can build your character. There is no limitation, at least from my understanding in that sense. Now, gaining loot at a big part of any character progression in all like those action RPGs games or MMO games, and there's a lot of different items that you can progress through, increasing them and adding extra affixes to those cards through of this kind of crafting system or whatever the system is. And of course you have legendary items, which are, I believe, the very hard to acquire items, but they are very strong and they even changing the way your character works in at least some way or another. And yes, so there is a vocation, you have your different crafts, and yeah, you have herbalist, blacksmith, burglar and captain. And there is of course a big overall world exploration. You can go on quests, doing all of those things, traversing through those maps, doing main quests and side quests and leveling up and eventually exploring more high level regions, so going from one to another in a campaign. So tactical, combat, fast, tactical and deck driven. Yep, this is combat. This is something I already touched upon, that this is all those different kind of areas on the map. It's not just for aesthetics, even though it must admit the aesthetics looks pretty nice, but it's also a lot of positioning and kind of tactical things tied to that as well. So enemies, okay, let me scroll down a little bit further down. Threshold and dungeons. So I think this kind of the general overview of what the game is, okay? Let me scroll back up, probably back to this kind of MMO main overview, maybe here, like that. Okay, so what's my kind of what's the first things that I like so far? And I would say the main thing that I'm liking is what I'm seeing here, at least in this prototype. And I should mention that this game is very, very early in development. The estimation delivery is, I believe, somewhere in 2027, so it's a 1.5 years from now. So obviously there is more than a year in full of the game development, but at least based on what I'm seeing so far on this page and in some previous videos and based on some Q&As and all of that, the main thing that appeals to me is the fact that what they're trying to capture, the kind of the vibe of the MMORPG, of freedom, the character progression, and kind of the sense of advancing your character and fighting new challenges. That's the whole sense of character progression is what I like a lot about the games, specifically like RPG games, for example. That's what probably keeps me playing some games like Elder Scrolls, for example, the Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era, which is my current top favorite game, simply because the character progression is so good there. So I just love when you have, you know, a low-level character, and as you progress through the game, you're getting stronger and stronger, you acquire new skills, new loot, and then you fight in different enemies. And that sense of progression is what I absolutely love about the games, whether it's video games like MMORPGs or action RPGs or here in the board game form. This is what I love a lot. Now, also, I must admit that I quite like the way it looks, even though this kind of the overall visual style, it's not something that makes you want to play usually, but it's definitely something that, at least for me, makes me interested in looking at this game, and I think it looks gorgeous. Honestly, I think the art and the character, and if I scroll down a bit, I think the overall design choice with the color palettes, it's pretty vibrant game, but not kind of over the top. I think it's pretty balanced in that, and the style is a bit like as if it's painted, so I'm not fully sure how to explain this. Just sorry for my limited vocabulary, but I just like the way it looks, and it's a big win for me. I like when the games not only deep and strategic and immersive and all of that, but also they look nice. Another thing I like, at least again based from my understanding, that you can absolutely play this game fully in true solo, which is not actually quite the case for many other games. They usually, even though they say, you know, it's for example, a game from 1 to 4 players, they oftentimes create like some kind of companions or other things. So basically you need to play as 2 characters, which I'm personally not a big fan of. I find it much more immersive and kind of deeper when you're playing with a single character, probably because it gives more sense of character progression, which again is something I like a lot. But it looks like here in this case in Threshold, they completely nailed it, that you can play absolutely as a single character. You don't need any companions. You can, of course, play as 2 characters, and you can play with up to 4 players. So full flexibility in that sense. And probably another thing that I like a lot here, at least based on what I'm seeing here, is the way the trays look like. And now if I scroll down a bit, so yeah, we have character individual trays, and this is where you can save all of your cards, your build effectively, all your items, your skills, pretty much everything, and then you cover it with this character board, and then you put a lid on top, and then you're good to go. I think this is absolutely brilliant. That's a big thumbs up from me when I see that when a game developer, they put a lot of thoughts not into how to make the game playable, but also how to store it and how to turn that setup and tear down and make it as efficient as possible. This is a big win for me again. And if I scroll down a little bit to the overworld, I think I can find it over here in the top left. Quick save system. Yeah, so region tray. Yeah, that's how you save it. And you have the same thing for the player tray. Yeah, this is very much, I absolutely love this thing. Plus you have all of these different kind of saving compartments for different components, whether it's some tokens, skills, again, your vocations, your cards, your experience, your trackers, your health, everything. You just plug and play effectively, just put the lid on and you're good to go to play. Yeah, I love it. This is a big thumbs up for me. Now next, I would like to talk about a few things that I'm not fully sure about. It's not necessarily things that I don't like, but rather just things I'm not fully understand how they work. So maybe I'm not fully sold on certain things, but again, because the game is so early in development, even though there are a couple of, you know, solo playthrough videos and even a how to play video, it's a very early prototype, at least from my understanding, and there's gonna be still at least 1 year full of development, so the game will probably change and improve quite a lot. So this is why I can't really say that I don't like certain things, but rather just my early thoughts on what I think maybe need a little bit more clarification. Or anyway, just want to share something on my mind in that regard as well. And for this this section of the video, in my notes I have only 4 words, which is campaign, hotbar, simultaneous turns, and boxes. I guess that's 5 words technically, but at least kind of 4 bullet points, if you will. And so the first one is campaign, and yeah, this is a campaign game. And I would say normally, like generally speaking, these days, a campaign game would unfortunately be a no for me, simply because of the time investment the campaign games require, and I just necessarily have this kind of time commitment that those type of games require. And there are quite a lot of games that I like a lot actually, but they ended up not in my collection simply because I don't have time to play them. For example, Oathsworn and Aridia and Hegemonia and a couple of other games. I'm pretty sure I would absolutely love those games, because all of those games, they have, you know, tactical battles and adventures and fantasy and character progression, all the things that I love. But because it's those kind of games are campaign games, just so hard to fit this, you know, to build this across your life. If let's say a game has 50 scenarios that you need to play as a campaign from 1 to 50, and let's say if you're playing maybe once a week, that is effectively you are committing to a full year if you're playing those kind of sessions from 1 to 50 once a week or the weekends. So that is quite a lot. But specifically for Threshold, I would say the main thing that counterbalances this for me is again this storage system. I think this is just absolutely brilliant, because that means that even if you're not playing the game for, you know, more than a week, if you're taking a break or you decide to play some other games in the meantime, you still have all of your progress saved, and it's so easy, at least from my understanding, kind of jump in and jump back and kind of change, kind of switch between games without overcommitting for, you know, a single game for a year or two, playing it every weekend. I think this is just too much for me these days. And frankly, that's probably the reason why I like the Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era so much, because this game is modular, and in the same kind of similar veins, this is probably the main reason why I backed Grim Coven, a new game from Awakened Realms, because again, it's a modular game, which is a big win for me these days. Now, this game, even though it's a campaign, I think this trace storage system can counterbalance that, and so I hope I'll be actually be able to play this game. Okay, so that was kind of the campaign, although I should probably even add a little bit more on that, because if we compare those things to the quote-unquote source material, the World of Warcraft, the way they handle future expansions, the future campaigns, and future regions potentially added to the game is also something on my mind, because again, if you compare it, for example, to World of Warcraft, the way it works there is that every new zone, every new region usually increases the level cap, which makes all previous zones that kind of turns into low-level zones, they almost becomes obsolete. And this is actually quite a problem even in the World of Warcraft itself, and this is something that its developers, they acknowledge it and then trying to revamp certain old content. Otherwise, it's a little bit shame that, you know, by the time the game exists for so many years and they added a new region, new expansions like every year, every 2 years, and every time that happens, that effectively turns all previous zones and makes them obsolete. And so I'm curious how the Threshold will handle potential future expansions, because it's again, it's a campaign game, which is not a modular type of games, which I generally like these days. And for example, if they add a new region, will they increase the level cap, so to speak, in that region? Because if they do, I think that might create quite a lot of problems with scaling, and because if you get back to the region 1, you become too overpowered to that region, or maybe if you even have no reasons to get back to the previous region, then again, it's a little bit shame. So my kind of personal wish is that I hope all of those regions will provide enough activities for you to do even at a high level. Once your character is at a high level and potentially even over leveled, kind of the recommended level of the enemies in that zone, you would still find something interesting to do so. And I'm pretty sure this is something in the developer's mind as well, how to make potential future expansions, how to make scaling works across all those regions, and I hope that they'll find a good solution in that. Now, my next thing that I would like to talk about here is the hotbar. And now, if you look at any MMORPGs or any action RPGs, the very first thing you do once you create your character and you log into the game is your hotbar. It's this kind of the panel where all of your actively using skills are located, and you're learning and memorizing all the shortcuts like hotkeys to pressing them and optimizing different rotations. So this is something always in front of you. But in this game, in Threshold, because your deck, your skills is your deck, and you constantly discarding and drawing your deck, just like in any deck building, you effectively never know what skills you end up having in your hand and whatnot. And I think this works obviously beautifully in some genres. For example, in Slay the Spire, which I believe it was a sort of inspiration for some of the combat mechanics here as well. At least that's my kind of educated guess. And so while I do love those kind of unpredictability of the deck building and the challenges it provides, so all of that, I think it works great. But because they're trying to capture very specific genre of action RPG and MMORPG games. And those games, they always have some kind of like a skill bar or hot bar where you have very specific skills that you press in all the time and you learn in a very specific kind of rotation. It made me think that I almost wish like the Threshold had maybe a couple of items, when you start an encounter, you might draw like, or you might always sort of allocate a couple of skills to your, sort of speak, hotbar to add just a little bit predictability and kind of knowing your character in that sense. That obviously would be quite different, like in terms of direction, how the game currently handles the combat. But again, if we're looking at the promise that the game tells you about the action RPG and the MMORPGs, and if you look at any character guides and those kind of games like Path of Exile or even World of Warcraft, any experienced gamers, the first thing they're going to tell you in the guide is learning your rotation. And even openers, whenever you are in a raid, the very first couple of skills you press, they are vital for your DPS, for your group survivability, so all of that. But in Threshold, again, because your entire skill line, your entire kind of skill set is your deck, and your deck is always changing because, some cards are in discard, some cards are in your hand, you never know what you get. I almost feel a little disconnection between what they promise of, being the sense of like action RPG and MMO and this kind of deck building thing. I think it's kind of almost like more like against Slay the Spire, those kind of things, which I, by the way, like a lot. I play Slay the Spire for many hundred hours, both the video game and the board game, so I'm not against the mechanic, but I'm just not sure if this is what I want to see in a game that promises to be like an MMORPG. And so personally, I would love to see maybe some kind of hotbar with just a couple of skills that you might allocate there and be in such a limited slots that maybe you would have, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 of those kind of hotbar slots for your skills. They would probably even open up even more strategic decisions like what specific cards would you put in those slots or your, sort of speak, hotbar, quote unquote. I think that would be pretty nice. At least that's just my 2 cents as someone who played a lot of MMO and action RPGs. Now, the next thing that I'm maybe not fully sold yet is simultaneous tones. So if I scroll a little bit maybe to the overworld or somewhere when they explore it's a little bit project story over here. So the core idea of multiplayer here, or I would say the game as a whole, that you have complete freedom in a way your turns work. You can go to the quest, you can go to the side quest, you can go gather some resources, some herbs or some mines, some minerals, you might go to the town, you do a lot of different things. And from my understanding, at least currently so far in this prototype, if you're playing with multiple people, all of them can do all of those actions individually, which is quite different from how many other games work. For example, in Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era, you have your overland movement that you as a party you need to decide where you want to go. Do you want to go to the town or a peaceful encounter or conflict encounter? And then you go there together as a group and then you do an action together as a group, whether it be a town encounter or a combat encounter. And for example, if we take a look at maybe something like Slay the Spire, which also actually has simultaneous turns, which means every player can have different actions doing at the same time, which by the way opens up quite a lot of strategic possibilities. But that being said, even in Slay the Spire, those kind of freedom of doing actions whenever you want, it's still constrained only to battles, but after the battle ends, you still sort of travel together as a group and decide whether you want to go, let's say, to a campfire, or to the event, or to the merchant, or to the next fight. And then within that fight, you do actions simultaneously. At least that's how it works in Slay the Spire. But here in Threshold, again, at least from my understanding from this prototype, you have complete freedom, which is awesome. I love this freedom. And I would imagine it would be absolutely amazing playing this in a solo, just exploring all those regions, deciding like, hey, do I want to go to this quest or to this town and to this encounter? This is fantastic. But when you're playing with multiple people, I don't know, maybe it's just for me hard to kind of have a feeling how this would actually feel doing that. And I was even trying to kind of have a thought experiment. So okay, let's say the game has arrived and I'm now playing with my wife and my son, and we created our characters, we're full of excitement, and now the game actually begins and I'm like, well, I'm going to the encounter and you can do whatever you want. You can go craft, you can go gather some resources, some mines, you go to the town, and well, bye bye, see you there. That's kind of feel a little bit awkward, isn't it? Maybe I'm wrong, I'm not sure here. Again, this is something I probably have not experienced yet. Maybe once I actually play the game, maybe that would feel nice, but so far I just feel a little strange, like you have so much freedom, but is it maybe too much freedom? Which is a little weird to say even, because I'm just even trying to imagine. So let's say one person is going to the encounter and another person is mining some minerals in the meantime. Will they level up at a different pace then? Again, I have just so many questions about how the system works, maybe because again, I'm not fully understand this, how it works, but I must admit that it does feel a little bit strange for me. And probably the final thing I would like to touch upon is the storage, specifically for the boxes. And if you look at the add-ons, the different characters, where is it? Play now. Well, maybe in the rewards. Yeah, actually, we haven't even looked at the price tag. So the threshold, the base game costs 130, which I would say is quite a lot of value, honestly, given how much content is there. I probably even expected it to be a little higher than that. So even though that's still quite a lot. And yeah, so we have these 2 expansions. So 1 expansion for the region, plus 2 characters, and from my understanding, those 2 characters, specific the Assassin and the Beast Rider, they don't fit in the core box, and that's kind of my main concern, if you will, because when this region lives in its own box, I think this is fair. There is a lot of, quest encounters, and it's not something like you mix and match encounters anyway. All those regions, they are very region specific, from my understanding at least, but this is not the case for the characters. So my personal wishlist thing is I wish all of those extra characters would fit in the base game, and this is something I would like to see here as well. And also, if I go to the FAQ, they also mentioned about sleeves, card tray and sleeve cards, and they say that the player trays fully support sleeve in your character deck, which is amazing, thumbs up, but other cards and their trays are not supported for sleeving, and this is, I would say, not as good. I'm personally a serial sleever. I try to sleeve everything, even the cards that I'm not shuffling too often. So again, as another wishlist item, if you will, I think either those cards they need to be PVC, so they wouldn't require sleeving at all, or other trays they need to be redesigned to support sleeving. I think this is really essential even for cards. I completely understand the notion that some cards that don't require shuffling, and so hence why those trays they don't support sleeves, but some people just like the tactile experience of sleeves, or just for durability, Personally, again, I would love to sleeve everything, and I would love that all the tray would actually support sleeving. Again, this is my little personal wish list, if you will. So yeah, overall, my kind of closing thoughts. I am pretty optimistic about the game, especially knowing the game design. I think they have a history already. Open Owl Studios, they have a couple of good games already behind this name, so I think we can trust them in that regard. And this is, of course, a very, very ambitious project. Turning an MMORPG into a board game. Can it translate well? And will they be able to capture that feeling of character progression and the freedom and exploration and itemization and all of that? And it looks like they can, based on the prototype, based on everything we've seen here so far. I think, again, I'm personally quite optimistic and excited about this project, even though it's still very early. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to unfold the development within the next year and learning more about the games, and hopefully some of those things, all these questions that I have in my head, hopefully it will be addressed. And yeah, in the meantime, I'm looking forward to learning more about the project, and hopefully you find my rambling, if not useful, then at least somewhat interesting, and my thoughts about this campaign. And yeah, I think that's a wrap for today's video. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.